fired up. It's made a great decision.
Great teammates, coaches, and other people who want to be Super Bowl champions. And we are. We're going to do it this year.
And we're going places because we want to go places.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today's video, we are back with something a little bit different, though. Today, we're going to be discussing kind of my early thoughts on this Lions-Packers matchup this weekend with the playoff implications that this has. This is the last week of the season, potentially, for basically three teams that are all in this race for a final wildcard spot in the NFC. So I wanted to do a little video like this because we know how much this game is going to mean for a lot of different teams in the NFC trying to make the playoffs. And I just kind of want to give my early thoughts out there. This is not a prediction video, so I'm not going to give you a score or anything like that. Just kind of what I'm thinking early heading into this one. Later in the week, we'll do a preview, we'll do a prediction. I'll watch some of the All-22. This is also not necessarily about last night's game either for the Lions versus the Bears. That will be coming, okay? Obviously, the All-22 form, but also I think me and Brad are going to do a post-game show kind of live for that coming up here soon, and that'll be in the community to link for that. But anyways, this one's just kind of my early thoughts. Lions currently 8-8. Now the Packers are 8-8. The Lions won the first time back in week 9, 15-9. So the Lions currently hold that tiebreaker. But if you don't know the playoff implications, you probably do. But if not, it's basically the Lions, Packers, Seahawks all playing for that final wild card spot this weekend. Now, what I'm personally hoping is that the Lions do play before the Seahawks play the Rams. All right, hey, come on, Rams. I mean, I'm kind of having that thought like, hey, you know, if the Rams want to just do us a little solid, like some of those dudes that aren't on IR, I don't think they're all on IR, but they might be. Maybe, you know, put those guys in this week. I mean, hey, look. Maybe the NFL knows something that we don't know. If the NFL wants to decide to have us play after the Seahawks game, maybe they know that, hey, the Seahawks might take this L. I don't know, okay? But I'm kind of hoping that we play before the Seahawks. It sounds like it could be Sunday night, which would probably be after the Seahawks game. And in that case, we may already know kind of whether that game means that we can get in or not. Because for the Lions to get in, we need to beat Green Bay at Green Bay. But unfortunately, we also need a Seattle loss to the LA Rams because of our loss to Seattle, that 48-45 game where they literally didn't punt. All right, that game was crazy. I don't want to go back down that road, but yeah, that matters now. And for the Packers, they have the easiest path. They just win and they're in. They control their own destiny. And then I don't want to say the easiest, like this is going to be an easy game because it's not. You got nothing coming, Green Bay, but the easiest in terms of they don't need any help. Seattle needs help because they need us to beat Green Bay, and then they have to handle business against the Rams. So this game means a lot for all three of those teams. I could see why they'd want to have us play afterward, right? Because, you know, we'll see. If Seattle loses, it'd be awesome. It'd basically be a playoff game before the playoffs because it's your win and you're in for both of the teams. If Seattle handles business, then for us, we're just kind of trying to play spoil there and knock the Packers out. So that's why I'm kind of hoping that we just play first. That way, everything's still on the table when we play them, and it feels like that playoff atmosphere. That would be awesome. But with that, early thoughts on this game. How I'm feeling heading into this one. Okay, now the Packers, they've won their last, 4 straight games now. They're rolling a little bit. Yeah, who they played. They haven't beaten many great teams. Probably their biggest one may have been Miami, 26-20, where Tua had 3 picks towards the end of that game. Was not the prettiest game for the Dolphins in that one. They kind of like gave it to him. But also, Packers handle business against the Vikings. A lot of crazy things happen in terms of special teams touchdowns, you know, defense forcing multiple turnovers. Like that kind of stuff happened before Aaron Rodgers even saw the field. The game was 14-3. So some wild stuff happened in that game last night, but probably their most impressive win. And now there's this hype train coming with Green Bay. Plus they're at home, so no one ever thinks it's possible to win at Green Bay. But I can say this. I'm all for this. I mean, I would love for us to control our own destiny, but this is about as good as it can get. I think Dan Campbell also said that. Coming into the year, I thought for us, we were going to win at Green Bay to get into the playoffs. I think I said at Green Bay. And then we played them in the first round of the playoffs. I thought that's kind of how it would work out. Turns out the Vikings actually had the better record, but I don't even think I could say the Vikings are the best team in the NFC North. I wouldn't say that. But either way, that's kind of what I thought was going to happen. Didn't happen that way, but this game still means a ton at Green Bay. Last time these two played, as I said, it was a 15-9 game. Lions won that game. It definitely wasn't the prettiest for either side. It was a rough game for Rodgers. It had to be like the worst game he's ever played against us. I don't know statistically there, but it feels like it was. He had multiple interceptions. He threw one to Aiden Hutchinson in the end zone. Kirby Joseph had a couple of interceptions. Bad spots of the field, which really limited how many points they put up. And for us offensively, if you think back to that time, both teams have changed and become a little bit different to this point in the season. Big thing for us then, our outside receiver room was really messed up. Like, we didn't have DJ Shark at that time. He was on IR. We also, of course, didn't have Jamison Williams, who we started to try to get involved a little bit more this past week against the Bears, get him some targets, some designs to get him the football. Obviously, his one big play was the little reverse for 40 yards. But last time we played this team, we didn't have those guys. I mean, this was kind of around that time where Tom Kennedy was one of our top dudes in this game, and he had a big reception and a 15-yard penalty tacked on top of that, which led to a touchdown drive, I think, right before half last time we played this team. So that was a big difference for us. Green Bay, since that time, they've had injury changes as well, but I also think a big thing there is guys like Christian Watson, who have started to become such a big-time impact player for this offense, and I kind of anticipated that this would have happened. I thought it would happen earlier, honestly, because when Christian Watson came out, I thought we'd draft a guy. I loved Christian Watson, so I know he's a dog, and that's going to be something that maybe we have to deal with a little bit more. But he had a couple big plays last time we played him. It's not like he wasn't there, right? There was a big first down that he had. I think it was on Will Harris. Like, he was wide open. So we had to face this guy last time, but it seems like he's a little bit of a bigger part. And there's a couple of key things that I'm thinking about early. Again, this could change because I'm going to rewatch this, watch them the film on these guys and stuff like that. But a couple of early thoughts that I had. First off, Packers secondary. And I felt like this coming into the first time we played this team. I felt like they had a top-notch secondary. Now, their stats against the pass aren't like the best in football. Now, that takes everything in the combination, right? But their stats against the pass, they're pretty good. They have the 14th best passer rating allowed, or 14th worst passer rating allowed. I don't know if that makes any sense. Basically, top half in passer rating allowed. They also have given up 22 passing touchdowns, which is a pretty good amount. But the biggest thing there is that they've also taken away 17 times. 17 interceptions defensively. We know recently the Packers have started to do that. 17 interceptions. They had one on us last time we played them. And that interception that Jair Alexander had last time we played them kind of felt exactly like that. Like, when I watched this secondary coming into the first time we faced them, and it was at home, big difference is we didn't have our outside receivers. We were a different offense, a little bit more limited passing the football. But also on top of that, when you watch this Packers secondary, you're like, man, they move like they're on a string. Like, there's not a lot of breakdowns in the back end. Like, they're on top of it. And the Alexander one was a perfect example. That's like the kind of route combination we ran where you're thinking that's going to be open. So golf through it. And then here comes Alexander. He just passes off the route to the safety, dives underneath and picks it off. And you're like, oh, okay. Player making a great play. And obviously Alexander did some things this last weekend against Justin Jefferson and the Vikings, who has been crazy this year, but the Vikings kind of forced it to him. Like, they will force him to football, and they took that away. Like, this Packers secondary is legit. So combine that with the fact that we're also going on the road, that's going to be very difficult for us, I feel like, early. But again, big differences. We also have more weapons now that we didn't really have last time we faced this team. We did have Swift, but on the outside, it's a little bit different because of some of the weapons we have. Golf, last time we played him, only had 137 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, a pick, and he was 14 of 26. So we didn't even pass the ball that much anyway. But with that, we know historically it's kind of been, look, if you can run on the Packers, that's going to give you your best shot. If you can run all over Green Bay, that's going to give you your best shot. And for us, in the past, we've tried to do that. Fortunately, we would be forced out for whatever reason. One, we couldn't get off the field defensively. We turned the ball over a couple of times, and then at that point kind of take us out of the run game, and then we wouldn't have that. Quickly flipping it to the other side of the ball, one thing that I've liked since Aaron Glenn's been here is I've really liked the way that he's attacked this Packers offensively. Like, I love his game plans that he's had for this Packers offense. Like, there's been times going back to last season to end the year where, I mean, even the first time we played Green Bay, we were right there with them. But to end the year at home, obviously there was some continuity, but you keep in mind guys like if you were starting at cornerback, and he hadn't been playing very much for us at that point. He played a little bit the week before, but we had some new guys in there. But the biggest thing is, for the most part, for the majority of it, there was a lot of continuity in the back end by the time it was the last week of the season last year. And I thought, man, just some of the disguises that he had in coverage, forcing Rodgers to hold on to the ball a little bit longer. It wasn't like, we shut down the Packers last year, and that was really mainly the first half because we didn't see him in the second half because the game didn't matter for them. However, then you even saw again this year, I really liked to this point the 3 times that Aaron Glenn has faced the Green Bay Packers, the game plans that he's had. And if you remember the first time we played the Packers this year, I know I'm kind of all over the place, when we beat the Packers 15-9. It not been the first game Jerry was necessarily back and playing, but it was definitely the first game where he was taking a majority of the snaps on the outside. He was taking a majority of snaps at corner for us at that time, and he was a huge part of it for us. With Jeff Okudah, obviously Will Harris has played well against Green Bay and a lot of their zone drops, So I've liked the game plans and the way that Aaron Glenn has played this Packers offense and what he's had for them. No, I know the Packers and Aaron Rodgers are going to put up points, but I like what we've done there, and I think we can force a turnover. turnover, even on the road. But the biggest thing then becomes, to me, probably the run game for both sides of the ball. And a lot of times it does. But when you look at this Packers run game, there's been a lot of talk about, them kind of leaning on that now. I don't know necessarily if that's true. Like their last few wins, their running averages have been a little bit higher, I guess. Like the Rams, they ran it 35 times for 138. That's really good. They kind of leaned on it. Miami was basically where they've been for the most part, 25 carries, 79 yards. Then the Vikings, they also ran all over the Vikings this past week, 33 carries, 163 yards. And probably the biggest thing to that is that Aaron Jones had 111 of those yards. But last time we played the Packers, which was key, is that they had 106 yards rushing as a team on 25 carries, which is about, 4 yards a carry. But the biggest thing there is that Aaron Rodgers had 40 of those rushing yards. A.J. Dillon was 11 for 34, right? That's just over 3 yards a carry. Aaron Jones in that game was 9 for 25. So their running backs weren't really having success rushing the football. And I think that's key. I like how we play in the back end, even though things are going to be a little different now and they're at home. I would expect them to be better passing the football than they were last time we played them. I don't think it's going to go like that. However, I like the schemes that we usually come out with, and I think we hold our own, to give ourselves a chance. For Green Bay, they've gotten very creative with their run game. This past week against the Vikings, there was a lot of creative runs, and, they love the wide zone rushing. They like to do that kind of stuff. I believed all year, and I've seen all year, and I've definitely, talked about it many times, is our defensive front, I definitely can hold their own. Like, we can win the battle majority of the time. It's not going to say we're going to dominate up front the entire game, but we can absolutely hold our own up front, right? But the big issues for us come when either one, they're in a position where we don't have anybody there, and teams kind of exploit some of the holes, like Carolina. It was a fantastic job. They found ways to put our cornerbacks, Jeff Okudah, they put him in the action a little bit. Biggest thing there was probably the read option. The read option that they brought out, which with Sam Darnold, maybe not expected, the speed option they threw out there, they kept isolating our edge defenders. And you wouldn't really expect that out of Carolina with Sam Darnold. You would expect that out of the Bears and Justin Fields, not really out of Sam Darnold, and they did that. And the Lions adjusted, they adapted, and by the time it was the second half, we were much better against the run, but it was too little too late. They dominated us in the first half to such a point where the amount of chunk runs they had were insane. They had 320 rushing yards in that game. So I understand the numbers. But what I've seen is this defensive front can hold their own if we contain on cutback zone runs, because that's a huge part of it. You think about last time we played the Vikings. We shut down Dalvin Cook, another heavy zone team. Shut the guy down. But, again, part of that is when you score offensively, you can kind of take him out of it, which is, can we do that at Green Bay? We'll see. Scoring offensively. And also on top of that, they didn't really get their quarterback in the action. They didn't use Kirk Cousins. Obviously, the Packers can do that. If Sam Darnold can run a read option, Aaron Rodgers can do it. But Lions, without having seen the film, seem to do better this past week against Chicago. And if there's a bright spot to take away defensively against that, is that, we give a few chunks, right? This was one of the most explosive offenses in football, Chicago. However, Aiden Hutchinson seemed to be extremely disciplined. Whenever they put him in the action, he seemed to be extremely disciplined, whether it was, the play action bootlegs, the rollouts, whether it was the read options that they try to hit us with. I mean, they still got a few good yards, but it wasn't like the massive breakdown for a 60-yard touchdown that they hit us with the first time around. They had a couple big plays, like the quarterback power was the big run, but not going to run a quarterback power with Aaron Rodgers. I believe our front can handle it, but it's going to come down to, again, that discipline, and I think that's what it's been all year for us, is that if we can basically close it in and make it our defensive front against your offensive line and who's going to win that battle, I trust our defensive front to win a majority of the time, and I believe they have this year. However, it's when things get outside of that and they start to put us in spots where there's basically nobody there, or they isolate our edge defenders, or they get out to the edge, which was a problem early in the year. We had to adjust and we got better, and then Carolina just out of nowhere, because remember, we were playing the run really well until Carolina. They came out and they just took everything that we struggled with, and by the time Lions adapted, they didn't have any time left. So to me, obviously, that's a big time key in this game, because if Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon are running all over us, which they didn't last time. If that's the case, now we could be in some big trouble, and the Lions are going to have to find a way to handle that, and I definitely think they can. Like I said, last time we played them, we handled it pretty well. It was Rodgers who had 40 rushing yards, 10 yards a carry on 4 carries. And for our rushing game, that's another big thing here, because like I said, historically it's kind of been that. Finally, Lions got it back on track this past week against Chicago, and they ran all over him. Jamal Williams had a career day, 144 yards. He had a big run towards the end, but he had a great day up to that point. Like, it was a little bit slow, like it took a drive or two, but then we got rolling, and he had a great day. Swift brought some of that, as we said, lightning back, right, where it was just like, hey, man, we just need like the 1 to 2 plays that are big chunk plays. And that was exactly the third down draw where we're thinking, man, we're 3 and out here, we're going to hand it off. That's what it kind of felt like coming out of the half, and maybe Chicago stays in the game. You run a draw, and that's what I felt like was where we were going to have success coming into it, because that's where Buffalo attacked that defense, is the draws, the delays. That's where they had their big chunk runs. Like, the Bears were susceptible to giving up big time runs, but that's how they did it, and Swift, right on cue, did that on a third, I think, and 18, and picked up a first down and more, and that almost, if you could argue, changed the game, because we Lions went on to score that drive, went up 3 touchdowns, and it kind of felt like, yeah, we kind of have control of this, and it never really felt any way else. We didn't let Chicago back into the game. So he brought some of that lightning back that we've been missing for Swift for a very long time to this point. And as a team, we rushed all over the Bears. And obviously, we struggled for a very long chunk of the time there, and I felt like this was the week we get back on track, and we did. We struggled for a while there running the football. We were falling down. I think a big part was Evan Brown. Then we had Evan Brown back for 2 games. We still didn't run the ball extremely well. I thought the Jets front, honestly, won the battle. Carolina, you could look at it and say, look, it's just different guys losing blocks. And that's not to say it was perfect in Chicago, but it was way better. Without having seen the all-22 yet, it was way better, and the Lions seemed to gain control of the line of scrimmage again. So if the Lions can carry that into next week, which was something at the beginning of the year, we're like, dude, we're going to run all over everybody. If the Lions can continue to carry that into next week, which I definitely think that they can, because if you look at this Packers defense, they do allow 5 yards to carry, 141 yards a game, and are 28th in EPA against run defense. We're going to give ourselves a really good chance, and this one's going to be fun. Turnovers come into play because the Packers have won the turnover battle. They forced a lot of turnovers now recently, and that's been huge. They've flipped the game. So, I look at Packers and what they've done, and yeah, it's impressive. They've won their games. They've handled business. It's not easy to win the NFL. They haven't been lighting everybody up offensively, defensively. Like, that's not been the case, but, they've gotten the run game going in 2 of those games, the last 2 of their last 3, and they're forcing turnovers now, and that's huge. Turnovers are going to be massive in this game, for both sides of the ball, whether or not the Lions can get one from Rodgers like they did last time. It could be in a key spot, could be in the red zone, right? That was a game changer. Hutch's pick in the end zone was massive, especially because offensively we didn't have the firepower, so we really had to play that kind of game. Then, of course, on the other side, for the Packers trying to force turnover on us with a really good secondary, but at the same time, a defense that's playing a little bit more weapons than they had to face last time. And I don't really worry about the weather, right? I feel like if you said, well, hey, if it was so bad that it was like only each team basically just ran the football, I would want to believe that we'd win that battle, that we'd be better up front, we'd run the ball better than they do. I'd want to believe that. So I'm not really worried about that sense of it. But of course, it can affect the passing game a little bit. However, last time we played at Green Bay last year, I thought we were fine passing the football. I really did. Like, we were up at halftime. We were passing the football fine at Green Bay last time we played them. Again, we were very limited in that game. I mean, you got to think, going back to that game, Quintez Cephas was like our top receiver. He had the big play early. Very limited in terms of trying to pass the football. Hawkinson had a big touchdown grab. We were playing well, but we were so limited that we didn't have the firepower to get back at Green Bay. Like, when we made a couple mistakes, when they hit a big chunk coming out of half, when we fumbled the ball inside our own 20, we didn't have the firepower to fight back in that game. We just didn't have it. We had to kind of play a very clean game. And now the Lions have a little more firepower than the last time we've seen this team. For both sides, turnovers can have the same effect, but for the Lions defensively, they haven't been great this season. So turnovers can be key because it can be that crucial stop that they need. Meanwhile, for Green Bay, what turnovers can do is it can get them in a position where you're forced to pass, as we said, taking you out of that run game, which are not great against. And if they do that, you're playing into their strength, which is very good pass rushers, right? They invested in that again this year. They have very good pass rushers. And then on top of it, you have a secondary that I feel like is very tough, and they're very opportunistic with 17 interceptions. So turnovers almost feel like they even favor potentially more Green Bay, where if you are turning the ball over and you're not getting them back on the other side to get extra possessions on the road, you could be in a very tough spot just like it was last year. So I'm very curious to see that if you're in a position where you're kind of forced to pass, the extra weapons should help us stick in the game, maybe get some explosive, a lot of quicker possessions than we were able to get last season. But at the same time, the turnovers can be the difference against this team, because that is, to me, the biggest strength of this Packers defense is playing with a lead. But again, in saying that, even with the weapons that we have, if the Lions are losing the turnover battle and they're not maybe forcing them defensively, or at least giving us an extra possession back, even when we've had weapons in the past before this regime, it was a similar issue where they are built to play with the lead. They have pass rushing defensive linemen, and their secondary is legit. So this is that game one of the most important of any, where it's like winning that battle, but at very least, defense, give us an extra possession, because if Aaron Rodgers does what he's historically done, throws like 4 picks in an entire season, he doesn't do it to us, and on the flip side, you know, we have the 1 or 2 dumb plays, now we're in a really bad spot. The weapons will help, but that's just not the team to do it against. Definitely some changes versus the last time we played this team. I'm excited for this one. Again, I kind of hope this is the first game, and maybe, hey, look, hey, Rams, come on now, you know. But anyways, this game's going to be awesome. I don't know. Maybe it's a primetime game. Maybe it's not. And, hey, if it is primetime and, you know, the Rams go out there and handle business, which I believe in you, Rams. Y'all have been there. Come on, y'all can do this. Forget the draft pick. We don't care at this point. We need you guys to handle business. If they can handle business and we get a night game, oh, my goodness. But like I said, I kind of assume we'll play the first game. And with that, this is about as good as it gets. This is about as good as it gets to play Lions, Packers, end of the season, to have it mean this. At very least, you have an opportunity to knock the Packers out of it, and I think this is just awesome. Like, this is all you could ask for. You're 1-6. To know that, hey, last week of the season, you're having an opportunity to potentially get in, and it's going to come down to that Lions-Packers game in Lambeau. That's exactly what I want. My early thoughts on this one. What are your early thoughts on this game? We'll revisit this for sure. Again, scenario for Lions get in, win. Seattle loss, we're in. Packers win, they're in. Seattle win, us lost, they're in. That's for the final wild card spot. Thank you, Pride, for watching, because the Giants just clinched it with the win over the Colts. Come on, Colts. Thank you, Pride, for watching, and I'm out.